Hey everybody, thank you for being here and welcome to #MurkyBooks and HSBC UK Futures. This event is a partnership between HSBC UK and #MurkyBooks, the publishing imprint created by Penguin Random House and Stormzy. My name is Pia Santi, I'm a creative and I'm a community leader. And to my right,
hello,
I have Chelsea Kwakye.
Hello.
Hello. Let me give you the full intro.
Yeah.
Okay. Chelsea is a British Ghanaian history graduate from Homerton College, right here in Cambridge University. She was here from 2015 to 2018. She is the co-author of Taking Up Space, which details experiences of black women and non-binary people within higher education. She's currently an associate lawyer at a city firm specializing in technology and media. And she's also on placement at Google DeepMind, working at the intersection between artificial intelligence and law. Welcome, Chelsea.
Thank you.
So I want to start by talking about investing in yourself, right? So you've spoken about the importance of self-belief, taking up space in environments where, you're perhaps underrepresented. How do you think investing in yourself, whether that be financially or through personal growth, helps young people succeed in higher education and beyond?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for me, I always saw investing in yourself as thinking of things in terms of like financial literacy. And for me, it just seemed really, really overwhelming. But what I guess changed my perspective is knowing that you can invest in yourself in so many different ways, particularly when you're at university. That could be academics, it could be expanding your network, anything that makes you comfortable and I think understand truly who you are as well. And again, there are different ways that you can do that. And I think we're so fortunate, particularly this generation, and you have the internet, places like, where you can find influencers, people who are very open to speak about their experiences and how perhaps they have invested in themselves. And you can kind of look at that, adapt that, and apply it to your own personal, lifestyle and experiences. But yeah, I think it's something that we definitely speak about in Taking Up Space, how investing in yourself and believing in yourself was really the key to just ensuring that you could do university and you could do it your own way and be very successful in that way as well. So yeah, take a very expansive understanding of how to invest in yourself. I think that's the best way to look at it.
An expansive understanding on how to invest in yourself. It's funny you mentioned that because how we actually met, this isn't the first time we're meeting. You and I actually met in 2020 because you were going on a journey of investing in yourself. And I actually taught you how to swim. So
exactly.
That is we've come
true
full
life
circle.
skill.
True life skill. So you're really investing in yourself there. So it's good to hear that. I want to move on to like building financial resilience. University life comes with its own financial pressures, as we know. How did you manage those challenges while staying focused on your academic and personal goals? What were the kind of recommendations you would give to students kind of trying to build their own resilience in that?
Yeah, I think for me, I had quite an interesting, relationship with money kind of coming into university. So I guess for background, I grew up two-parent household. I grew up in a place called Chinkford, which is kind of between Essex and London. And when I was born, my dad had gone part-time. So my mum was kind of the main breadwinner in our household. And it was so I'd done a few kind of bits and bobs and jobs before, but it was until I got to sixth form that I got a job before I went to university, because I knew in my head I'd pretty much have to fund all the extra bits that maybe student loan wouldn't cover, and just to make sure that I was okay. But in terms of resilience, I think I'd always grown up knowing that money was quite scarce. To be frank, just very frightened to spend money. I would always, any money that would come my way, I'd either save it or I would never spend it on myself. I would always have to give myself a really, really big justification that I have to put this aside, or this goes to this, and this is why this makes sense. All of these crazy calculations that I guess a 17, 18-year-old, I should have been out enjoying my life, going out with my friends and stuff. So I think in terms of resilience, it was really just informing myself and understanding, okay, what works for me. And the biggest thing was just keeping it very simple, knowing that I had a certain amount of money that was coming in and a certain amount of money that was coming out. How do I ensure that this works for my budgeting? So particularly when you're at university, accommodation costs, food costs, but also it's important to go out with my friends and enjoy myself, get my hair done, like buy something new if I, had the extra coins to be able to do it. So I think the resilience definitely came from informing myself and making it less anxiety inducing and overwhelming, particularly because there is so much information out there and you're not really sure if you're doing it the right way. So yeah, keeping it simple was the best way to build resilience and to kind of have that financial literacy that works for me, basically.
That's very interesting that you mentioned that. But where did that come from at such a young age? Did you have older siblings that you were looking to? Did you have family members that you were looking to? Where did that come from at such a young age?
Yeah, I think my parents came from Ghana, so we're both Ghanaian.
Yeah.
And they came over in the late 1970s. And I mean, I think what was kind of typical for a lot of people who migrated and came to the UK, they didn't come with much. And I think a lot of it was just they're seeking an opportunity. They'll kind of figure out when they get there. They've got contacts here already. It will work out, basically. But like I mentioned with my upbringing, I think every single conversation was always prefaced with, we don't have money.
Right.
Like, this picture's really nice, but we don't have the money.
Yeah.
Or like, this, you get the point, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I'm the youngest. So I've got an older sister and a brother who I love dearly, and I love them so much because they made mistakes, so I don't have to.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean, I've seen them make financial decisions, good and bad, and they're very honest with saying, don't do that,
right?
Or like maybe do this. Like this is a good idea. When I was at law school, actually, I was lucky and privileged enough to be given a maintenance grant by my firm, which I think most kind of students do. And my sister said to me, let me keep the money for you. Let me keep it aside. And anytime you need to take some money out, I'll charge you a fee. And I was like, okay. I was like, okay, cool. Sounds good. So she took the money, and then I realized, like, okay, I don't know, I've got my friend's birthday, like, I need some money. She's like, okay, cool, £20. I'm like, oh.
Right.
And then it got to the point where I was like, no, this is ridiculous. So I was like, no, you're done. I'm firing you as my in financial advisor. Yeah. But shocked, by the end of the year, the money was done. Right. So like those types of relationships I'm very lucky to have with my family. And I think even up until now, like, it's not just my upbringing, but that's where those kind of ideas and reasons of how to act, that's where they come from.
I love that. Yeah, I'm unlucky enough to be the firstborn, so I was the one that made the mistakes for my little brother and little sister to, learn from.
Yeah.
But that leads me beautifully on to my next question, which is about setting financial goals. You talked about how your sister helped you almost manage your money in a way, but I want to talk about, setting goals, and goal setting, which is something that's kind of crucial to both academic and financial success. But, how did you go about setting goals, whether it was saving for university, which you touched on a bit there, or planning your career, how did they play a part in your journey? And is there any advice you'd give to people trying to set goals?
Yeah, I definitely think there's elements that you can learn from both the academic side and the financial side. I think academic side, it was almost a bit easier because when you're at school, you're maybe chasing a particular grade, or again at university, you're chasing a particular grade, and it almost felt like the goalpost doesn't move. Right. You know what you need to get, but particularly when it comes to your finances, the goalpost is always kind of changing, and I think there's these kind of incremental creeps. A lot of people call it lifestyle creep, for example, like when you have a bigger salary or you come into a bit of money, things just start to change. Like, instead of thinking,
you might get that extra coffee on the way you might get that pastry now.
Exactly.
Right.
So I think in terms of setting goals with my finances, I like to kind of separate them into different pots so that you have varying goals, and it doesn't just rely on all or nothing. But I think that's definitely something that, like, I wasn't doing that when I was at uni. It was something that I had to kind of learn.
Right.
particularly for me, I think psychologically, it almost helped to see any money I had saved in like one big pot. So I could see it growing,
yeah.
but actually it wasn't practical. So I think it was nice to have a goal that, okay, if I know I'm going on holidays or if I want to buy like a pair of trainers or something like that, there's a pot for like short-term goals. If I'm focusing on something that's way more long-term, am I saving for a house? Do I want to do another, degree? Like, that's the more long game pot. And then, pots for just like tiny little things like coffees. And I think having it spread out definitely made it feel a bit more sustainable and like actually achievable as well. But yeah, I'd say that's the main thing.
Okay, and so your advice would be to like, having it a bit spread out. Don't look at tackling the mountain all in one big go, but have it different spread out for longer term and maybe shorter term goals.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, right. Going on to a bit of talking about entrepreneurial mindset in education, which is something I believe you have. Writing, taking up space with Ore was kind of a huge entrepreneurial project in itself. How did the process of kind of publishing a book, teach you about the importance of having that mindset, even when you're kind of pursuing academia, so you're kind of pursuing writing a book, and which is really all encompassing in itself.
Yeah.
But also you're at, an Oxbridge College, how did you kind of balance the two?
Yeah, I think you touched on it in that it's so encompassing and it's almost really hard to just not be overwhelmed by the whole situation. But I think kind of tapping into like what it means to be an entrepreneur, like for me, it was just understanding and appreciating that things just might go wrong, or they might not go how you intended them to go or how you planned it to go. And I think, particularly for me, I'm such a planner. Like I know what I'm going to do, like I know how I'm going to do it, like to-do lists on my thing, but you kind of have to let all of that go. We, I think, went into the process in terms of writing the book, thinking that, okay, this is what we're going to talk about, this is how it's going to plan out. But actually, by the time you end up writing and you have this like mass body of work, and so many people have kind of input their considerations into it, like it's something completely different from what you first intended. I think having that just ability to be a bit free in how you move with these types of things has definitely helped. But it was hard. Like it was not easy. And I think, studying at the same time as well was tricky. So,
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from that is actually allowing yourself to be agile and fluid and, whichever way it takes you, just kind of follow it and surrender to that almost. I want to ask you a question. How did that affect your kind of mental well-being? Trying to balance the two. Here on your lap, you have a book deal with a huge kind of imprint and publishing house, but then also you've got this huge pressure of, being one of them. We were talking earlier, and he was like, not many people from your school got to go to an Oxbridge College, having that huge pressure.
Yeah.
What effect, if any, did that have on your mental well-being?
Yeah, we talk about it quite a lot in Taking Up Space. There's a chapter that I wrote on mental health and well-being. In short, it was an immense pressure. And I think for me, what was really tricky is that I knew what the trigger was. And the trigger was university, and it was the pressure that I felt. And it's quite something when you can't really leave that environment. I knew I was going to feel like this effectively for at least 3 years, and then potentially when I leave as well. It takes a big toll, and I think what I talk about in the book is around feeling like you have to be the representative for your community. And I think in my case, it was like my school, my family, my community, like my mum and dad had told
the whole WhatsApp church
world.
Group. Yeah.
Everyone. And it was like, she's the one who's effectively made it. But I think it was really tricky to explain to people that, I've got in, but like now that I'm here, there's still so much that I have to do and we need to do. So it has a big impact, and like I think it just feels really overwhelming at times. And it is just about, I'm doing this for myself as much as I'm doing it for anyone else. I'll try my best, and that's all I can do. And I think I was really fortunate that my parents they've never been the pushy type, and they've always said, as long as you do your best, that is all that they can ask for, basically. So I was glad to have that kind of family support. But yeah, it was a lot of pressure, but I made it.
You made it, and you're here to tell the story. And I want to thank you for sharing that. I want to touch a little bit on mental well-being and mental health in finances. Now, you know, we touched a little bit on the book, but finances, you know, they're often linked, you know, financial well-being and mental well-being. Is there a link, and how can one impact the other?
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, 100%.
Yeah.
I think I can speak from personal experience as well of just being really anxious about my financial situation. And also because I personally feel like money is still for some people such a taboo to talk about. And yeah, it's a very individual journey, you know, people, their finances are very specific to them. But for me, kind of speaking to people about money and how they deal with their finances, and essentially the more open people are, that has really, really helped me. But yeah, I think especially when I was at university, I kind of remember speaking to my really, really close group of friends. Like, I'm thinking, yeah, we've known each other for years now. I know everything about you. And I remember opening up to them and just saying, like, oh, I'm really stressed out about like student debt and just like loans. Like, if I come out and, you know, I don't get a job, like I'm going to have this debt, blah, blah, blah. And none of them had student loans out. All of their parents were actually paying for their education.
Wow, okay.
And I think that was the first kind of real indication where I thought, oh, wow, okay. I kind of had just made an assumption that like, yeah, we're all in this together. And, you know, this is like a holistic financial situation for students. And I think from then I was like, okay, this is a very individual journey and I need to find out how it works for me.
Right.
And I think that definitely helped in terms of just aiding and kind of quieting down the like anxiety that I felt around money.
So sorry to interrupt you there. So it actually wasn't until the moment you realized, actually, hold on a minute, they're not in the same situation as me.
Exactly.
I'm in an individual situation. That helped kind of quiet down the noise, you'd say.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's because I was always kind of comparing myself to what potentially other people were doing, how they were managing their finances, and like, why did that person have maybe more money than I had? And I was like, hold on, like the whole situation is completely different. Like, you're receiving money from your parents, I'm giving money to my parents. Like, even things like that. It's a very different scenario. But yeah, knowing that I was just kind of in my own race and how I chose to deal with it was like, you know, so my money's coming in and out. Like, that's all I can kind of learn from that situation, and then try to aid myself with as much information as I can to make sure it's a stable position that I'm in for the future.
So what I'm taking away from that is actually, you know, to help your mental well-being in that thing was actually remembering that you are in your own race, you know, you are in your own lane, and you know, not comparing yourself to others, because every situation is kind of case specific and individual. Okay, you know, at the start of that conversation, you spoke about speaking to your peers and perhaps your network. I want to talk to you a little bit about the importance of investing in your network. You know, building connections and a kind of a strong support network is kind of crucial in any career. But how important do you think investing in relationships and networks for achieving kind of both personal and financial success is, especially in kind of academic spaces, you know? Yeah,
it's so important. Like, I mean, even the fact that we're sitting here now, you know, you taught me how to swim. Like, would we have thought that maybe we'd be sat here and having this conversation? Like, it's amazing. But like, that's the whole point, that you invested in me. I invested in you.
I love it.
I hope.
Yeah, you have, for sure.
And I think the kind of key point there is that you just never really know who you meet. So my philosophy has always been, you know, never really give to receive, but I do think like treat everybody you meet with respect, and like, it's not necessarily professional networking, but yeah, it's your network. Like, speak to people, understand a bit more about them. You may never know the different ways in which you might meet again or how they would help you. But yeah, I think when it came to academia, and just being at university, it's a completely new environment. Like, I think we spoke about it very briefly, but I was the only person from my school to come to Cambridge, so I wasn't really rocking up with like 10 people that I already knew. So I was very open to just meeting new people, seeing what they were about, And yeah, trying to kind of forge a path for myself that way. But that was through my classes, that was through joining sports clubs. Like, there were so many different ways that you network and you get to know people. And it's not just your peers as well, it's people who, you know, were my director of studies and lecturers. And then also going back to my school, speaking to my teachers. Like, there are really ways that you can be, you know, expansive with how you find a network, and I think just, again, be adventurous in how you do it, because it is important.
And we kind of spoke a little bit about off camera about how you started an ACS society here, and I think groups like that are ways to kind of foster almost your relationships and connections and networks, and I think that's really important. So I want to commend you for definitely doing that. Really, really good work, man.
Thank
really
you.
good, really good. I've got one more kind of, I guess, thought starter or starter for 10 before we kind of open it up to Q&A, and it's talking about financial literacy for future leaders. So kind of looking ahead, how do you think improving financial literacy and capability among kind of young people, especially black students, can contribute to creating more diverse and financially empowered future leaders?
Yeah, I mean, no brainer, right?
Yeah.
I think, again, I just think it's such a big injustice that it's just not taught in schools more widely, and that people aren't very open about what it means to be financially literate. Because we talk about like financial literacy all the time, but like, what does that actually mean? And do we know, and how do we ensure that people have the tools to be what we call and like understand as financially literate? But yeah, it's so important, like, for future leaders, ensuring that they're equipped to go out into the world, particularly when it's not a level playing field as well. There are people who their parents or their carers, whoever, would have taught them about kind of wealth management and how to manage your money. Not even just managing it, like making sure it grows, how is it tax efficient? Like, there are so many different ways that people have that leg up. So I think, to the extent that people can just be really open and honest about how they manage their money, and share the tools in which they do that as well, I think it's so important. Like, taking it that one step further and actually giving practical advice as to how you do something.
Yeah, I think that thing there, what you said, is really important about sharing the tools, because I think in previous years there have been people who have perhaps been gatekeepers, if you will, and not shared the tools or the resources, which then creates a bit of an echo chamber at the top. Okay. So yeah, I think it's definitely important that, you know, as they say, each one teach one, right? So if you learn it, you then share it. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for that conversation.
Thank you.
I'm going to open it up to the floor now for some Q&A. Yeah. Has anyone got any questions? Yep, I think we've got one there.
Hi, thank you first of all for this lovely talk. It was really interesting. I have a question about time management. So you were talking about how you had like these two fields of responsibility, being uni and then your book and like sort of entrepreneurish. And like I'm interested in how you actually balance that. So were there like specific days or times you set out for, okay, now I'm gonna work on this book, and now like the rest of the time I will work on uni stuff? Or was it more like go with the flow, if I can afford it with my uni stuff and I feel like it, I can work on my business? How did you manage that? Thank you.
Yeah, so the question was about time management. You know, we spoke about the mental impact, you know, managing university, but also a book. But the question is about time management. You know, how did you carve out time for both writing your book and university? Was it intentional, or was it whatever comes in goes?
Many late nights.
Right.
I think at points I wished it was intentional, but life just happens. And it was, to the extent I could, I would basically do my uni work in the day, and then any time I had for the book on the weekends, in the evenings, in the mornings, I would try and fit it around my uni work. So when I was writing my chapters and taking up space, I was at law school, or I was in New York at Columbia Journalism School. So we were both in some shape or form studying, or like an element of studying. But yeah, it was tricky to time manage. I think particularly when you've got competing deadlines as well. And yeah, I think a really stressful moment for me was when I had my law exams. Then we also had a deadline for the book. and it's like they're both equally important. Like, what do I prioritize? And I don't know. I made it again.
You made it. You made it. You made it. So what I'm hearing from you there is it is about allowing yourself to be a little bit fluid. You know, there are going to be some times where, you know, you might have said, okay, this is time for uni, and actually the book deadline's looming, or vice versa. Yeah. Okay, great. We have another question.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I was relating to what you were saying about people back home being like, you're so lucky to be here. And then the expectation when you're here is, oh my God, life is going to be like, wow. And then you're bombarded with a bunch of work. So my question is, how did you balance, I guess, the imposter syndrome whilst also having to like actively work against that to get something done?
So the question is, how did you balance, you know, or how did you combat actually the imposter syndrome and kind of break through that to actually get your work done, you know?
So I actually went to a conference very recently, and they were talking about imposter syndrome, and the man on stage was so upset with the term imposter syndrome. He was like, do not use it. Like, it is bad. But I disagreed slightly, because I think, at a point in time when I was at university, I did feel massive imposter syndrome on a race front and also on a class front as well. And that definitely added to the additional pressure of feeling like you have to represent. And again, talk about in taking up space, but not just represent, but be the absolute best. Yeah. Like, you have to get a first, you have to leave with a job, you have to save the world, basically. And again, it was trial and error. Like, I can't sit up here and honestly say that it was easy. I kind of just got over imposter syndrome. Like, there were some really tough times where the pressure was overwhelming and it doesn't end up in a good way. But I'm really glad that now retrospectively I can look back and at least say throughout everything, like, I tried my best, and best is definitely a moving post. So if it was best for me, I think that's enough.
That's it, yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're never going to be able to please everyone, basically.
Right.
And yeah, that was like a nice foundation level belief that helped me, I think, get through uni and post uni as well.
Okay. You're never going to be able to please everyone. Just do the best for you.
Exactly.
I hear it. All right, cool. Have we got any more questions out there? Yep, we've got one there.
Hello guys, thank you very much for your conversation so far. I've got a very broad one for you. What have you wished you could have done differently at your time in Cambridge?
Oh, okay. If you could go back in time and change one thing, maybe two things, what do you think you would have done differently at your time at Cambridge? At Homerton College, right?
This is such a good question. It's a bit nerdy, but I kind of wish I spent more time like in the library.
Okay. No, but that's fair.
And I know you guys are laughing because we're pretty much in the library all the time, but as soon as we left university, access to knowledge was so hard, and I think it was something I definitely took for granted. Because you're so overwhelmed with like trying to get your essays done and attend your supervisions and all of that stuff, but it was such a privileged position to know that you had basically access to some of the best and brightest minds, not just your lecturers, but your peers and people around you. And just kind of tapping into that a bit more, because when you leave uni, it's a pick and mix. And I kind of wish I had that experience to, speak to more people and kind of understand like their point of views and where they're coming from. And all of that really does expand your worldview and your knowledge. Library, sorry.
What I would say to you is that maybe give yourself a little bit more grace, because you was writing a book at the same time. So you probably didn't have the luxury of time to do that. Are there any more questions out there? Yep, a couple more.
Hiya, thank you very much for the talk so far. I think my question would be, what would be maybe a couple of tips and advice for Black and minority ethnics navigating their way through the University of Cambridge?
So do you have any tips for those under the BAME representative
Mm.
navigating their way through Cambridge?
Yeah. Read taking up space. Aside from that, a lot of people mention it, and I do think it's like one of my favorite sayings, but like, find your tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so simple, but honestly just really, really effective. Like, find people who just relate to you on so many different levels, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be one group. Like, I was able to find my tribe through sports groups. Like, I joined my athletics team at college and my football team. Then we also had ACS. I also had like my history pals and students who, like, we would do things together. Kind of navigating spaces can be really tricky. But yeah, find the ways that they work for you, and I think in ways that you enjoy as well. Also, a big thing, particularly around like activism and feeling like you have to be the flag bearer and feeling like you have to be involved. I definitely felt like that at times, that, well, if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. But I think for me, it was really important that, like, I put myself first. I am here to study and make sure that I get the best out of this experience, basically. And if there are different ways in which I can, you know, potentially provide support for somebody else or give my feedback to someone or something, or a workshop, I would do those things. But the feeling that you have to be at the forefront and you have to sacrifice and give so much of yourself, as well as study for a degree here, is really, really intense. So I think just kind of be kind to yourself in that respect. Mm-hmm. But definitely, if I'd give one thing, it would be find your tribe, like, find your people, and it just makes the experience a lot easier. Like, not 100% better, but like a lot easier.
Okay, find your tribe. I like that. I think we had another question over there. Yeah, two more over there.
How do you sort of stay present at where you're at in life? Because I think I constantly think, like, you've got to get a job, it's got to be good pay to pay off like loans and stuff. But then I remember that actually all these days and months are going by and I'm like not actually grounded in where I am in life. So how do you sort of just recognise your sort of like small wins day to day? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, great question. So yeah, how do you remain grounded and stay present? You know, you're juggling all of these things, you're doing all these things. How do you stay present, you know?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I think trying to stay grounded as well is really important.
Yeah.
I like send myself an email.
Okay, that's good.
And I've got a folder in my email called Core Memories.
Nice.
And it doesn't have to be like a long, like, dear diary, blah, blah, blah. Like, just hey, you completed this today. Like, this was really hard, but you're done now. And just kind of click send. And I think that for me, so like, a couple of weeks ago, I was clearing out my inbox and I was going through the folder and I was like, wow, this is nice.
I love that.
Like, I feel good.
Yeah.
This is nice. But yeah, just kind of reminding yourself of the wins. And again, it's up to you. Sometimes don't really expect people to do that for you.
No.
But I see it as like a way of archiving my history and kind of what I've done as well. And that's, again, as a history student, like, that's so important to me, because otherwise it's just lost, or life happens and you forget.
Right.
But yeah, I do try and take stock of yeah, I've done well for myself, and like, I feel proud. And that's just how I feel. I don't need to scream it to the world. But yeah,
of course not.
I've got my little folder and
I
feel
that.
good.
I like that. I kind of do that, but with a pen and paper.
Yeah.
I kind of review about every quarter. I just sit there and write to myself. But I like the email one.
Yeah.
Electronic's nice. So yeah, take stock, you know, write an email to yourself. We've got one more over there.
Good evening. Thank you so much for your time. My question is about sleep, and generally, how has that been for you over the past, let's say, 10 years?
I love that. So, as somebody who, you know, went to an Oxbridge University, written a book, law school, sleep. How important is sleep to you, and how much sleep do you get?
I'm the worst person to ask, because I can sleep. I can sleep now.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I do not have any problems with sleep.
Right.
I know what else to say. Like, I can sleep.
Right, you're a sleeper,
I get my
okay.
8 hours minimum.
Oh, wow. Okay,
yeah, like, I'm a really good sleeper. But to be fair, when I was studying, or like anytime I'm doing something very stressful, I do struggle to sleep.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, apart from that,
Oh, wow.
I can't say too much.
You're God's favorite. You're God's favorite.
Sorry.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, we've got another one over here.
Hiya, thank you so much for the lovely talk. And I just wanted to ask you, what's your tips for, I guess, saving money during university?
Oh, okay. So your tips for saving money during university.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Okay, what I did to save some money, I tried not to see it as like a really big task. I would just set aside, whether it was like £5 a week, just like slowly growing a pot of money. Controversial or not, but I didn't have an overdraft. I just wanted to kind of know that the money I had in my account was the money that I had.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to go down the path of like dipping into something that I knew I'd have to pay back, basically. So it was very much just living within my means. And
Cut your coat according to your size, as my mum would say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And other practical tips in terms of saving, I think, like knowing that if you can eat in college and perhaps instead of eating out, you can save money that way. Seeing if you can share things with friends as well. I would always do a really big food shop at home before coming into uni.
Okay.
Just like rack up as much pasta or kind of, I don't know, tuna, I don't know, something like that as much as possible. But yeah, the big thing was kind of just setting aside a consistent amount of money every month.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned earlier, just keeping it very simple. Like it doesn't need to be more complicated than that.
Yeah, start slowly, little by little. Have we got another one? Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
Thank you very much for your talk. I just had a question about how you gained your wisdom on financial literacy, because I've been relying on my parents for 18 years. So as a first year, I'm struggling on like how to get that information. So do you have any like resources that helped you to find your way through that tough time?
Yeah, so where did you gain your wisdom for that financial literacy? I think we touched on it a little bit in our conversation, but yeah, I'd love for you to expand on it now for the rest of the room.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's tricky because like family was a big reason, and like I mentioned, my brother and my sister made the mistakes, so I didn't have to. But again, that's very dependent on like who you have in your family, right? But I have always taken a look at, you might see like wealth management kind of companies. They're usually quite good with like blog posts and just kind of summarizing information in a really easy way to understand. I guess know the audience though. They're often targeted towards like professionals or people who are like in full-time jobs and stuff. You guys have like TikTok and stuff now. Like there are so many financial influencers. Again, always take what they say with a pinch of salt.
Of course, yeah.
But it's a good resource, and you can kind of cross-compare and see, okay, if a good group or like sample of people are saying the same thing, why not? Like there might be something in how they're saying it. And then also, take a look out for books and just like really handy kind of guides. Anything that's very simple, gets to the point, tells you exactly what you need to do, shares resources. And then I have always had a look on Money Supermarket or Money Saving Expert, one of them. Martin Lewis does a good show. My sister's actually the co-host, so I get to watch her on TV as well. And there's always like very good tips there as well. Again, know the audience, but like always good to know for the future or for, as you are now. There are usually some stuff for students as well, which is good. So look at different resources, basically.
Yeah.
Also, another thing I forgot to mention, I know that HSBC UK and Murky Books have quite a few online resources as well for students and I guess people who are at university more generally. I'm pretty sure you can just Google and the playlist should come up on YouTube. So that's another good resource.
Okay. Look at resources, they're closer than you think. Any more? Oh, sorry, one more, yeah.
Hello again. I know I'm being a bit greedy asking another question, but what would you say is the single biggest lesson that you have learned at your time at uni?
Oh,
Ever.
there's going to be many, surely.
That's a big
That's a
question.
big one. Okay, sorry. So,
Okay.
single biggest lesson you've learned during your time at university? Maybe give a few. I think it might be hard to give one.
Yeah.
Maybe give like 2 or 3.
If I can,
Yeah.
that's like such a big question. Okay. One big lesson, and I think it revolves around pressures of finding a job.
Right.
So quite specific. But in my second year, I think it was the time that like a lot of companies just descended on the university, and there was a lot of pressure to almost fall into something that you were being offered without really understanding like day to day what you would be doing, what the benefits are. It was just, I've got no money. You're promising me like so much money in 4 or 5 years. You're promising me this and this and this. And I almost think you're in a very vulnerable position.
Yeah.
So I think my biggest lesson was, and I guess my biggest lesson to people as well, if you're at university in this position, really kind of understand what you want to do in terms of not necessarily where you want to work, but what are your skills? What do you want to do? What are your reasons and what are your motivations? Is it because, there is a financial incentive, and I think that's fine. That was kind of a big reason why I went for my job, because I knew my parents wanted to go back to Ghana and I would be set, basically. So there was that motivation. But also, okay, is this really what you want to do ultimately? So I think that was a big life lesson, like trying not to just fall into something because it's being offered and it seems like the easy option.
Yeah. So understanding your why.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And motivations as to why you have your why.
Right.
And then aside from that, biggest lesson, I don't know, like you really will make like friends for life at uni as well. Like don't kind of take the experience for granted.
Right.
You've left home, you're away, you're meeting so many new people for the first time. Like when you come into the world of work, it's kind of rough, but like enjoy this time now, basically. As somebody's very wise, as you said, and, so I'd say.
So don't take it for granted and enjoy it.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. We have another question at the back there.
Yeah, just a question about transitioning from education into your career and what lessons you learned in education that helped that process, and also how have you dealt with setbacks over the years when things haven't gone the way you wanted? How have you dealt with that, and how have you learned to deal with that going forward through life?
Okay, so it's a bit of a two-parter. So it's about that transitioning from university to work life.
Yep.
Were there any kind of transferable skills that you learned and acquired whilst at university that you could apply in the work life? And then the second part was about, any trials and tribulations, I guess, that you overcame.
Yeah, I think the transition, I think it was actually okay. And on paper, I do think it's a hard transition. Like you go into this environment, and when you start university, it may feel like, I'm kind of free to do whatever I want. But it's still within the confines of, you have a university, you're going to lectures, it's like for a block amount of time. But I think the biggest transition and lesson for me was I could always view school or university as happening for a set amount of time. I knew that I'd be here for 3 years, and my mentality, like good or bad, was just like, I just have to go for it. 3 years and then I'm done. 3 years and then I'm done. And then you go to work and it's like,
it's forever.
This is forever. Like, as in 60 years and then I'm done. Like you can't have that mentality of just, I'm gonna go for it and it's a set amount of time. It was basically just being a lot more sustainable and ensuring that, you just don't burn out. Like, what do people say? Like, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Like, that really, really rings true when you're in the world of work. And at least for me, like, just making sure I just keep on kind of going.
Have you experienced any burnouts?
Yeah, definitely. I think particularly around COVID as well. that was really tough because I had just started my new job, but I had started it from my bedroom.
Right.
And starting in a new environment and a very, very intense job, and you didn't really have maybe the support of just, going into a new environment and people know who you are, they know your face. Things are always very different face to face as well. But yeah, I'd definitely say my first year was really, really tough. And that probably leads on quite well to like in terms of setbacks and things like that. It was hard, and I think when you're in the moment, it's always kind of difficult to recognize that it's a period that in the future you'll view as a setback.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think I, again, have been always really fortunate, and not everybody is like this, but I've got such a positive mindset with how I approach things, or when things happen to me, how I respond. And again, it's by virtue of, I just think, my upbringing, which is such a privilege. But I've always just seen things as like, okay, maybe that wasn't for me. Or
Nice.
This wasn't great, but I've learned a lot from this experience. Like, how can I be better? How can I maybe not do that again? So kind of changing the narrative, even if it's completely delusional, just changing the narrative in my own head makes me feel better about how I've responded to a particular situation. But yeah, I'd say those are the main things.
Okay, wow, thank you. Oh, yeah, one more over there.
In terms of like the professional environment and career-wise, how did you find a firm that actually delivered on promises of diversity and inclusion? Because I feel like they all say it, whether they do it and actually embrace differences is a complete different thing. So how have you found your sort of experiences in your current job as well as at law school and all the other things you've done around publishing? And thank you.
So when entering a new space, whether that be law school or whether it be a new firm, how did you know that these spaces that you were about to enter would deliver on, the promises of diversity and inclusion?
Yeah.
No,
I think it's completely true that everybody says.
Right, it's a buzzword. Right.
It's a buzzword, and I think it's one that, you really do just have to kind of scratch below the surface and really understand, like, okay, what do you mean? Like, diverse in how? Because diverse doesn't just mean, race, ethnicity. No. Like, it means so many different things. And I think in terms of me kind of choosing where I wanted to go, how serious they were and how committed they were, a lot of these kind of big corporations and firms, like, they publish their maybe goals or strategies. They usually have like a D&I kind of booklet or inclusion. And I think just critically analysing them was very helpful. And seeing like, okay, I think personally for me, all of them have a lot to improve on. But what was important was how they go about doing it and who are the stakeholders who are supporting that as well. Because if you see that it is very junior members of staff and there isn't really that senior buy-in, there's a question of like, how seriously is this taken, and is this seen as a strategic goal? And then also for me, I've never really liked it when people have always had to attach D&I initiatives to like, well, it's great for the company, like financial gain, and we become more profitable. I personally feel like there are enough good reasons to want to have diverse talent than to have to link it back to how much money the company will make if you have diverse talent. So you can be critical in how you assess these things and also challenge them as well. Because I personally think if you're putting out a public statement, it's open to challenge as to whether you're actually doing those things or not.
So look at those critically and don't be afraid to challenge them.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, there's one more over there.
Hi, first of all, thank you for your book. I think it's the first piece of literature that I've read that documents and validates the experiences of women of colour in Cambridge. My question is, what is a piece of advice that you'd give yourself to your younger self, specifically in your uni era?
A piece of advice that you would give to your younger self. when you were back at Cambridge?
I think a lot, but I think I'm going to settle on you deserve to be here.
Right.
I had so many moments where I was like, they've made a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
Like, this is a bad idea. Like, always trying to view in the process where like somebody has let me slip through, or like this wasn't really meant to happen. And I really just needed to have the self-belief that I'd worked just as hard, arguably harder than a lot of people who managed to get into the university, and why it was that I had this like self-doubt that was always in the back of my head. Like, even when I got my final year result, I was still like, I don't think this is right. Like, this is strange. But nobody else seemed to challenge that, but I was the only one who was challenging myself.
Right.
And I just wish I could go back and just say, like, you deserve to be here, so take the opportunity and do as much as you can with it. And yeah, I think there were definitely times where, because I didn't think I deserved to be here, I didn't take opportunities, and I would kind of shun away from things or say that, oh, I think somebody else is better suited. And so I definitely feel like I missed out on a lot, particularly in my first year, because I was just like a deer in headlights trying to work out what this place was. So yeah, that piece of advice, you deserve to be here, is the key.
Right. Yeah, sometimes we're in our own way.
Yeah, exactly.
Some really amazing questions there. Thank you for being there, guys. Thank you for the conversation, Chelsea. Today's event has been a collaboration between #MurkyBooks and HSBC UK Futures. And thanks for watching.